Okay, welcome everyone to this Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon for you in the East Coast, Misophonia Q&A. I'm happy to have you all here. We'll probably usually pick up a few more people in the first 10 minutes or so. We'll see how it goes. So, um, I am Tom Dozier. I'm a behavior analyst. My primary career is a behavioral parenting coach, but for the last 13 years, I've been spending most of my time on misophonia research, developing treatments, understanding this condition. I'm also the president and founder of Misophonia Institute, which is a nonprofit to promote misophonia awareness and research and development of treatments. So, with that said, I had posted out in the announcement for this a few questions just to try to get us going and talking. Anybody have a question that they would like to, just unmute yourself and ask?
Tom, this is Randy Morgan again, and thank you for the help you gave me and my family 8 years ago. Glad to be back in touch. And we're still having a great challenge with sounds that family members make more so than my daughter is triggered by other people. And it's difficult as a family member not to take it personally.
Yes.
So wondered, what has been discovered in the last 8 years about that, and what can we do about that, if you may? Thank you.
About taking it personally, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a really tough situation, Randy. When I guess one of the things that I would say is that misophonia is not a choice. So when let's see, I'm going to stop sharing this to switch over to another screen that I can show people this graphic. When a person experiences a trigger, the brain kind of runs through this cycle um, of what is it, what's happening, what's going on, and the signals, the stimulus signals in the body and externally come up to this spot in the back of the cerebrum called the anterior insula. And there's an emotional reflex learning structure that can take a neutral stimulus, just a certain odor, the smell of grandma's house. And because that's associated with grandma, you get that smell like, oh, and it feels good. And so there's certain stimuli, like odors especially, are good at triggering emotions. And it relays out to this learning structure and it goes, oh yes, that is anger and disgust, and it fires down into the amygdala and hippocampus, and it's boom, an emotional explosion. So emotions for a person with misophonia is like sweating. It's not something that the individual can control. And so if you realize that, maybe that can be helpful. Okay. It's not, I mean, one lady told me, she said, when I was a teenager, she said, my stepdad just triggered me horribly. And I adored my stepdad. So it's not a measure of relationship. Okay. Although it is truly in the moment a real emotion. So the other problem that you get into a lot that people have talked with me about is that she says, Dad, I've told you that sound I can't stand that sound. So why do you keep doing it? And that's in their mind. Why does he keep doing it if he knows that it bothers me so? Well, the answer is because those are normal sounds, right? That's the answer to that question. they're normal sounds. Um, but it still feels very kind of personal because they know that you know that it upsets them so. Now, the other problem you get into here is she is off having her life, and she has fewer triggers or fewer severe triggers. And then she comes and she gets kind of used to that level of misophonia. And then she comes back into the family where she's had the strongest misophonia triggers, and there's the most memory of anger here, and there's the strongest physical reaction. And then her misophonia severity goes from a 4 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10 because she's back with the family, and it's extra distressing because it's not what she's used to tolerating. Um, so that's I don't know any other way other than asking you to recognize it as it's like sweating. Now, you also can look at what does she say and do when she's triggered. And Randy, does she explode on family members when she's triggered?
She has, but not as she does not explode as to the degree that she did in earlier years. But
Okay.
of course, as family members, we have PTSD from those moments, tend to react in defense pretty immediately. And I just wanted to follow up with my other question to say,
Okay.
so I'm afraid that what you're going to say is that one of the things to do for her health is to limit her coming back to spend time with the family if her memory and responses are so much stronger.
No, I would not say that.
Okay,
The,
that's
the, the
that's
thing to
pretty good
do,
together.
the thing to do, Randy, is to convert your home into Niagara Falls sound when she comes home. Add lots of noise to your home,
Wow.
right? Add a box fan in every room and a sound machine or the noise app. I often recommend the TM Soft white noise app because you have all kinds of different sounds that you can play on it. Let's see, I'll just show the icons here to everyone. So this app, the pink and the blue that are basically the same, except the blue one doesn't have ads and the pink one has one ad per page. And so you start adding the sound of, if it's clicking sounds that triggers her, you add sound that has some clickiness in it. And if it's mushy mouth sounds, you add some sounds that have water kind of moving in it, something that has similar frequency components, and you just try to make it more manageable. Um, the other potential issue is if she can do some kind of counter conditioning, if she knows if she can plan to relax. If you add the noise, then maybe she can be more relaxed. And if she's more relaxed, then her triggers will be less severe. And you actually can get some counter conditioning where they come down, but the trigger response comes down. If your home is quiet, is your home normally quiet, Randy?
No, I mean it ebbs and flows.
No, no. I mean, do you have any continual sources of sound in your
Dog.
home?
Dogs. We have dogs. We have three dogs.
Okay, and the dogs don't trigger her?
No, not at all.
Okay, but the three dogs don't give you the same kind of sound um, as you would with a noise app.
Okay.
So having that background sound in the home can make it far less triggering.
Okay. I don't want to take more than my fair share of time here, Tom, but I did want to also ask if somebody who's suffering from misophonia does not want or is there therapy now for somebody? When we spoke last, the idea of exposure therapy was considered barbaric, and I still think that that's probably true. Um, is there therapy? And the concern that I have is my daughter feels that with therapy, talking about it, thinking about misophonia, puts her in a state where she's more vulnerable to being triggered.
Yes, that is first off, thinking about misophonia does put you in a state where you're more vulnerable to be triggered. So, you've probably received some of my announcements about the 2025 misophonia treatment research study that we're conducting with the University of North Texas. And we think that's going to show that there is effective treatment for misophonia, although it takes time and effort. The study that they're doing is providing a 16-week treatment program for people. So that's 4 months, right? That's a long time. And it may even be 16 sessions so that it's 6 months total. But we know that these reflexes change with gentle experience. And so when a person is relaxed and having fun and engaged in watching a movie or playing a game with the family, and little triggers are occurring, that their physiological, neurological responses can just start to come down. And so it's not sit here while we all eat until your misophonia goes away. That's barbaric and traditional exposure therapy that doesn't work. But if a person is relaxing uh, and engaged in other activities, then their trigger response will decay. And so we have a lot of not, I would say, study data, but we have a lot of individual data of cases in people where we do that regularly. And that's the treatment that I provide now. Uh, and again, it's getting so happy that by just being distracted. So I use the Misophonia Trigger Tamer app, and it's an app that can play a small trigger. And so I had a young lady who was triggered by coughing, which is particularly difficult because with cough, it's one boom and it hits you, and then you can't deal with how to manage it because it doesn't happen again for another 10 minutes, right? So it's like single events. But we used the Trigger Tamer app, which played just a small cough while she relaxed her tongue. That's where her reflex was hitting her. She relaxed and watched a movie with her mom. And her reaction to coughing started just slowly coming down. Now it hasn't completely gone away because when she's in the real world, she still gets a cough and it jerks her, but it's much more manageable now. And so treatment that makes misophonia more manageable is available for a person who's willing to, who has some fun activities to do, to engage in. And they don't have to be fun. They can be relaxing. They can be, interesting, but some pleasant activities and small triggers, tiny little bits of triggers, and allow that to come down. So I hope to be able to demonstrate with this research study that we're funding at University of North Texas that yes, there is effective treatment for misophonia. Does it work for everyone? No. Does it work for most people? Yes. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome. And you're welcome to ask more questions. So let's go back to there's a hand that went up. I don't know if that went up on purpose, Randy, or not, but it looks like you just put your hand up.
Sorry, I was just clapping. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
that's clapping. You're welcome. I appreciate that. Okay, anyone else have a
Well,
specific
what
question.
was the name of the sound app again that you said?
Okay, the sound app is the Misophonia Trigger Tamer app.
Oh, no,
Okay.
the one that you said, that you
Oh,
showed.
the noise app. Okay. Yes, the noise app. It's the white noise, catchy name, or white noise light, LITE, and it's by the company T as in Tom, M as in Mary, Soft, TM Soft.
Got it. Thank
And
you.
it's a great app, and you can do mixes of sounds. The one thing I will say is they hide this so it comes up with a picture mode like
Yeah.
that. At the very bottom, it says manage. It should say list, in my opinion, but it puts it into a list, and you can look at individual sounds that come in it,
Ethan, do you want to get ready to go and get some bread?
and then you can um, look at mixes, and you can create your own mixes. So it's really fantastic. I just had a situation. I think the person won't mind me telling about this. I know they won't. But I had two situations. One with this woman who was being triggered by a group program where the person was mumbling to themselves. And it was just really making this intolerable. And so with the app, we put on Crowded Room, or she put on Crowded Room into her AirPods. And with the Crowded Room, let's see, I don't know if that's going to come through. I've got to figure out how. Let me stop sharing for a moment, put on my musician sound. Now it's going to be coming through. And with that playing in the background, she was able to participate in the entire day-long program and not be significantly triggered by this woman. Another person was triggered by typing at their work, and they're in a field where people are typing. And so she put on the sound of rain on a car roof. And it's going to be clicky. I won't play this too long in case it bothers some people, but there's rain on a car roof. And it has a lot of clickiness to it. And that clickiness made her not be aware of the typing. And so,
Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah.
right, because she's hearing clicking
But it's not typewriter.
but
Yeah.
it's not
Right.
typing. That's not
Yeah.
typewriters or not
Yeah.
keyboards, right, or computers.
Right.
And so that a misophonia trigger is not just a sound or a sight. It's the context also. Who or what's making it? What's the setting? And by the way, Randy, family settings is where she has lots of training. Your daughter had lots of training. Of course, that makes the triggers there worse. But it's all of the context of complex issues. And so if you can change that context to it's rain on a car roof, not typing, then it can make a big difference. Another question.
Well, so along the same lines, if it's whispering, what kind of sound would you use to
Well, that's a good question. If it's whispering, maybe in fact something that has some soft. By the way, you can download sounds, so maybe you can find something. But here is ocean waves that's kind of coming up and down, and
Okay.
you can do a mix. Here's a mix of beach, ocean waves, and rain on a car. So it's got kind of complex group of sounds in there. The other thing about sound as a management technique for misophonia is that when it is silent, your ears turn up the sensitivity, right? So sounds seem louder, they're more noticeable, and the clarity or fidelity of the sound is perfect. And your lizard brain goes, "Oh, that's a whisper," and it reacts and it triggers you. When you raise that background sound, essentially the perceived volume of the trigger sound goes down. So just raising the background sound with even a fan, a box fan. Box fans are wonderful because they're very loud, and you can put cardboard on the back of them, and they generally make a very acceptable sound for people. And so that's, but anyway, you can add just general sound also for that. Okay, another question.
So I guess my question, it sort of sounds like conditioning and exposure are sort of slightly similar, like they're
Yes, they are.
by a different name, you know.
Well, yes, but let me talk more about counterconditioning. Counterconditioning, because we know that misophonia develops through a neurological process called conditioning, classical conditioning. And so when you hear a trigger, there are physical reactions in your body. So let me back up and grab this. So this shows kind of models of misophonia. And you hear the trigger and then you're angry. And this is what people experience, or this. You hear the trigger and you're immediately angry and physiologically distressed. But what our research indicates is you hear a trigger and there's a flinch in the body somewhere. And with that muscle flinch, usually it's a muscle, usually it's a skeletal muscle, but it can be internal. But with that flinch, that triggers the emotions. So for example, my wife developed severe triggers to her chicken squawking. So we're empty nesters, and we're in our 70s, okay? So we're definitely empty. Oh, we don't have to, we can have grandkids here. But we're empty nesters. I get the downstairs spare bedroom with a little window that looks out over the garbage cans and, and firewood and such on the side of the house. And she gets the dining room window with a big window that looks over the side yard, which is her chicken yard. And she has these pet chickens. And so these pet chickens were triggering her horribly when they were squawking loudly. And we investigated her physical response. And people with misophonia rarely do they report this physical response. Rarely. And so we investigated with very, very weak triggers, and she noticed that she was having trouble breathing, that she was feeling it in her chest, and that if she would breathe in slowly and breathe out slowly, that it would make it less triggering. And so essentially she would hear the chicken squawking, that's a stimulus, and the lizard brain would go, okay, that goes with tightening breathing muscles, and it would hit her breathing muscles. And then for 2 seconds after that start of the trigger, or that part of the trigger, because this is a continual process, but single trigger, bump, muscle, did I do the right thing? And if she reacts in a normal way where she kind of goes, ah, and jerks, that tells the lizard brain it predicted correctly, it did the right help. But if she's just breathing in and out and it's trigger, boom, keep breathing, trigger, boom, keep breathing, trigger, boom, keep breathing, it will die out. And so for her, counterconditioning was when her chickens started squawking rather than running away from her desk or putting on headphones. Her job initially was to breathe. Slow, steady, deep breathing. And the trigger went away.
Wow.
Okay, and this is something I deal with on a daily basis, of having triggers go down in severity, and often they can go away if you keep it going down and down and down and down and down, then triggers can go away. That's far different than telling her, well, look, Pam, if you'll just stay at your computer while the chickens are squawking, it'll get better, which is traditional exposure therapy, what people are talking about with traditional exposure therapy, and it doesn't get better, right? It actually gets worse with that kind of experience, because it's trigger and it hits her and she goes, ah, and tightens, the brain goes, oh, next time I'll tighten more, trigger, boom, ah, next time I'll tighten more, trigger, boom, ah, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. So there's really technically a big difference between counter conditioning and exposure therapy, and what people typically would call exposure therapy. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Do you have a follow-on question about any of it, or?
Well, so your point about the physical and then the extreme emotions. I mean, for my son, the physical is very visible. It's an immediate sort of body Tourette kind of response, very kind of violent jerk,
Okay.
head, body, which is very is very surprising to him and distressing. And it's just a very nanosecond between the physical and the emotional response.
Right. But most, again, if you ask him what was the most horrible, he would probably, in fact, I had a 10-year-old who had a really, really strong physical response. And when I was working with her, she said, no, I don't have a physical response. I just feel rage. So she was right on model A. And with small triggers, we would see that every time she heard a trigger, her
Yep.
that she would jerk. And so there's an app called the Misophonia Reflex Finder app. Okay, and this is a free app, and it's the purple head there that you see. And the Reflex Finder allows you it opens up and it allows you to go to a list of triggers, and it's pretty long list of triggers in this thing now. And you can also even record triggers, but it allows you to play it back at a specific volume and duration. And so when you take that crunch sound down to a k sound, then it starts to trigger this response chain, but because it's just a k and not a crunch, it doesn't explode all the emotions, and the person is able to see where their physical response is. And I do this with every new patient that's willing. Every now and then I get, well, for young children, I don't necessarily do this. So if a child is 5, I wouldn't do this, because you can still do happy activities, not knowing exactly where the physical response is, and get the counter conditioning to occur. But yeah, to know where it is, and then I also, how old is your son?
22.
Okay, so to know where that, if it's in, like, if the first spot is in his neck, so it may be. I have seen a couple of cases where there's this flinch that occurs,
Yeah.
but it starts at one spot, and it's like you get jabbed at that spot, and then once so here's my misophonia imitator rubber band here. So it's like trigger, ah, and then you get the explosion, but it may have started right in one spot.
Oh.
Okay, and then if they can learn, if it's, let's say, in their shoulders, if they can learn to relax their shoulders and try to be relaxed when they're in a situation where there may be triggers, then that can cause counter conditioning
Okay.
and have it come down. So it's again, this is the treatment that Dr. Spencer at University of North Texas is going to be trialing this fall, and I'm sure if it's 16 weeks, it'll be going into this whole academic year. But I've had a very situation where a man, every time he would hear a trigger, his left shoulder would jerk up. But we found out through testing that the shoulder was like a Tourette's tic, and so that, I don't think that's the right word. It's just a tic. It's tic, and with that tic is actually triggered by a breath reflex. So his initial physical reflex was his breathing was altered, but there was a physical manifestation of this tic that occurred that made it look like this was his reflex.
Oh, wow.
Right, so you can have subtle challenges like that. And there's a lot of variation in misophonia. And by the way, you mentioned nanoseconds. From the time a person hears a trigger until this physical response begins is 200 milliseconds.
I believe it.
Right, and then we don't know. I've never seen. We haven't conducted. No one's conducted a study on how quickly these emotions occur. They seem instantaneous, but a few hundred milliseconds is perceived as instantaneous. All right, another question.
Tom, it's Randy again, and I'm wondering if you have experience with patients who are triggered by whistling.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. My granddaughter was triggered by her brother random whistling, and we had we set up the Trigger Tamer app to work on this, and I don't know if it's because her brother kind of understood that it was triggering her or whatever, but he stopped his random continual whistling. And so we never worked on the trigger because he just stopped this random whistling. But yes, whistling is a relatively common trigger. I don't know what to say about that other than, you have to start with a small trigger.
Conducted with counter conditioning for it?
I'm sure I have, Randy. I just don't remember. I mean, if anyone is triggered by whistling, please mute yourself until I wave my hand again, because I'm going to play, a microscopic whistle here using this app. So I'm going to go down to a 0.5% of volume and 0.3 seconds. So again, here comes the whistle. Give me 30 seconds at the most. Right, so you heard that little bitty chirp, and that's where you start with even smaller than that potentially, where you start with counter conditioning. And if a person is just engaged in normal fun, I'm not a great fan of video games for kids and adults, but if a person is a video game player, often they can just have the Trigger Tamer running while they're playing video games, and they get occasional little bump, and that bump then allows it to start coming down.
Yeah, that even that microsecond whistling would be enough for Natalie. In fact, I can share that from PTSD, we empathize, my wife and I, to the point that we would hear that and be like, "Oh my God, is Natalie here?"
Okay, so Randy, did you happen to feel anything when you heard that little whistle?
Anxiety.
Well, where was that anxiety? Where was that anxiety?
Yeah, I guess shoulders probably.
Okay, so you have misophonia.
Okay.
Misophonia is contagious because at some point, Natalie heard a whistle sound and thought they're doing something wrong, or they're that's unfair, or they're rude. But she had a sound of a whistle, and she had a negative response to it. And with that negative mental response, there was a physical response to it, right? Clenched her fist because they were doing something wrong. Now you started hearing a whistle, and when you heard the whistle, you thought, "Is Natalie going to explode?" Right? And with that, "Is Natalie going to explode?" you tightened your shoulders. So if you wanted to experiment with this, you could, again, trying to have positive events and occasional little whistles. The Misophonia Trigger Tamer is a paid app. It's $10, but the Reflex Finder is free, and so you could have your wife intermittently tap that little play button while you're watching a show or relax or something, and if you have a reaction that, like, you feel it and then it's instantly gone, then that reaction will almost always decay and come down with experience. And so you could actually experiment with this to see whether or not you could eliminate that trigger of whistling, because it is a misophonic trigger. And Tom Dozier's and Misophonia Institute's definition of a misophonic trigger is there is a stimulus and there's this learned physical bump to the body. And that's exactly what you described if you're feeling it in your shoulders. So that makes it a misophonia, not a PTSD trigger.
Thank
Or
you.
just a thought, a worry that oh, is Natalie here? Is Natalie going to be upset? Now, there is also another trigger that may be here, and it is not part of this chain. If you, for all of you, if you wanted to think back to a bad situation, and Randy, you could do this with some of the chaos from having Natalie, react, and just relax, but think about, remember being together, remember being in that car ride or that party or family dinner or whatever it is. But if you think about that, just remember it. If your body starts reacting when you remember it, then that is a learned reflex also. And in a way, it's
Does
like
heartbreaking count?
well, just notice how it is physically. Notice if you just think of that dinner party, that birthday party or that Thanksgiving dinner or that car ride from hell, then just notice if you're reacting, physically reacting. And if you're physically reacting, that is another reflex of misophonia that we work to eliminate. And the way we eliminate it is by engaging in a very positive activity, and then just occasionally getting a little blip of Thanksgiving, and then back into the activity. And so you want this really high endorphin activity, and then you get a little low misophonia memory, and you go, and then you go back into the high positive activity. And that will start to, the positive endorphins of this activity will start to coat over this memory and start to make it become more boring and more boring and more boring.
So
And
Tom,
go ahead, yes.
no, go ahead.
No. Do you have a question?
Well, on your list of questions,
Yes.
how do you explain misophonia to a family member? I'm trying to figure out how to explain it to Social Security for a disability and SSI kind of situation. Is there a more scientific or you know that helps people understand that flow from trigger to because the people in the disability world still are not clear on what this is about.
Correct. And actually, people in the misophonia world are not clear on what this is about. That the misophonia world of researchers view misophonia as A or B.
There do seem to be two camps.
And well, there's definitely two camps. And all of the researchers are researching A and B. All of the university researchers, except the University of North Texas. And University of North Texas is researching this. And Misophonia Institute is looking for to fund more examples of people that are willing to research this, because we see it every day. Every day I have a new patient, I see this model. And the only people who will tell you that this is the correct model are the ones that either have an immediate pain or the ones who have a sexual or a groin response, because it's disgusting and this response is so noticeable to them. But everybody else goes with pretty much A. Now, back to your question. So, how old is the person that we're working with so that we can explain misophonia to the Social Security?
22.
22. Okay, so the first thing that needs to happen is you need to compile everything that has every therapy session report and evaluation, all of that. You can keep compiling that, okay? And then one of the things that I have done recently to help some people, I write letters, not as a psychologist, but as a person providing treatment for misophonia. Then I can write a letter explaining that it is a reflex condition. And for this person, when we ran the test, that here is the muscle area. It's in their abdomen, it's in their calves, it's in their shoulders, it stops their breathing, right? So we're actually going at this as a accidentally learned reflex condition. And then from a disability standpoint, you want to get a heart rate monitor, like a arm strap heart rate monitor, or iPhone, an iWatch, and record the heart rate that goes with hearing these triggers. And that heart rate data, it's usually going to be there with a strong trigger. And it can show the level of distress that the person is getting into when they are exposed to these particular sounds. Now, if you try to tell them, my son gets, your son has to do the talking because he's an adult, but he says, I just get really upset. I'm just filled with rage when I hear somebody sniffing. They go, doesn't count, right? I mean, it just, you're making it up. You're nutty. You're just looking for something. So trying to, again, I have a letter that I explain that's as a disability, as a behavioral response. And then I think taking heart rate data would be definitely something you can do. Is your son like completely isolating from triggers?
Well, I'm his main trigger, and no. I mean, we try to avoid each other, but yeah, I mean, it's
Okay, so is he able to carry on with life? Is he able to hold a job?
yes.
Is he able to?
Well, that's part of the problem. He can't hold a job and go to school, and going to school, he gets triggered at school occasionally.
Okay, you're far away from anything that would probably allow you to get Social Security disability. Right? I mean, it needs to be much, much more troubling than you just described to me.
Okay.
It needs to be pervasive. It needs to be, he can't, if he had an established career, like this one man who was an engineer, and he worked in an office, and the office sounds all started triggering him, and he would go to this therapist and get this psychologist report and get reports from me and have a session with me, and he'd take the session notes, and he submitted a 1 inch thick package to Social Security, and he got Social Security disability. But
Yeah, and I mean, misophonia is not his only thing. Of course, he's got autism, he's got PTSD, he's got other things going on. So,
but I think getting a package of that. But anyway, the Social Security,
yeah.
I think the when he's triggered, has he tried to learn what to do? For example, using the noise. Is it high functioning autism?
Level 1, yeah.
Is that's what used to be called Asperger, I think.
No, he's not Asperger's because he has language delays, but
Okay. So anyway, that having the right management techniques in school can make a big difference.
yeah, the other concern is that his reactions can bridge over into self-harm.
Okay. And I think to some extent, knowing what's happening to me makes this less terrifying, right? He's not crazy. He's not, this isn't all in his head. He isn't being possessed by aliens.
Correct.
And so knowing really what's happening can make can be a real positive relief for some people, a lot of people.
Yep.
Okay. Another question. Anyone? Craig? We're not so formal. You don't have to raise your hand at this. Just unmute and talk.
Okay.
But thank you.
Yeah. Hi. Hello, Tom. Thank you for doing this. Yeah, I have a 16-year-old son. This started around 9, so it's been going on for a while. Well, I got two questions. One is it, I read in some places where this could be caused by head trauma, because he did bump his head a couple times when he was younger, but nothing major, no concussion, but he did bump his head pretty hard. And then my second question is, for him, it's the yawning. If someone yawns right in front of him, it triggers him, and he says he feels like an itch in his temples that he can't scratch. And I don't know if that's part of that physical reaction you were just describing, but he is triggered by yawning. So I finally came out of my bubble, and I'm really trying to help him now. So I mean, he did go to some therapists younger, but they were just play therapists. It wasn't really addressing the misophonia. But and I never took him to an ear specialist. I did take him to an audiologist a couple times this last couple months. But we do have an appointment with an ENT specialist in next month, and then on Monday we're gonna go to the CBT therapist, which we've never done before. So the cognitive behavioral therapy. So I don't know. I guess I got those two questions. I know that was a lot, but if you could please comment on that. Over.
Ask your question very specifically.
Okay. Okay. First question is misophonia caused by head trauma?
Okay.
And second question is, what do you recommend for yawning, and yawning triggers, and is his sensation in his temples related to that?
Okay.
Over.
So let's start with the first question. Is misophonia caused by head trauma? The answer is generally no. Misophonia, by the way, Craig, is your son a perfectionist?
In some things he is, but generally I would say no. But over.
Okay. Perfectionism goes very strongly with misophonia. But what happens, if we look at this, again, I'm going to come back to this picture here. What happens with the development of this physical response is that a person hears a sound, and it can be any kind of a sound. I just reviewed a journal article submission, a manuscript, and the number 2 trigger in terms of occurrence with this group of people was the sound of mosquitoes or flies buzzing. And this is not an American population, so I've never had, in the 1,500 or 2,000 people that I've talked to and worked with, I've never had somebody complain of mosquitoes buzzing as a misophonia trigger. And this was like the number 2 trigger in this group. So it doesn't matter if it's yawning or a thumping sound or whatever it is, something from the neighbors. Person hears a sound, they have a thought, and with that thought, they have a physical reaction. My wife heard the chicken squawking. She thought, I hope this doesn't bother the neighbors, and they report us to the city. And with that thought of, I hope it doesn't bother the neighbors, she held her breath. So it was squawk, thought, hold the breath. The lizard brain doesn't see the thought, it just sees the squawk, and she's holding her breath, squawk, she's holding her breath. And then that develops that physical reflex that called Pavlovian conditioning. And then as it keeps occurring, it becomes more annoying and upsetting and irritating, and these extreme emotions develop. So misophonia is developed through normal experience with normal brain neurology, where a person hears a sound and has usually a judgment thought about it, that that's not fair, that's not right. So yawning, for example, maybe there's a rule that you're supposed to cover your mouth when you yawn, and he sees somebody yawning and they don't cover their mouth, or they cover their mouth and he still hears it. So he takes that rule of cover your mouth when you're yawning, and he converts it into his own embellishment of that, of cover your mouth and be quiet. And so he hears a yawn, and hears a yawn. He notices the person doesn't fully cover their mouth. He hears it and he goes, they're breaking the rule. They're breaking the rule, or they're breaking the rule. Somewhere there's a reaction because they're breaking the rule. And the lizard brain can see that maybe 3 or 5 times, and it doesn't take much. And it will develop that reflex where it's automatically now he hears a yawn and his shoulders are going up. So it's not caused by head trauma. It's caused by normal experience with normal stimuli, and usually judgments or concerns.
Yes, sir. One point is, it's interesting you say that, because he said it started on the second day of 3rd grade. They had a substitute teacher, and I guess it was an elderly gentleman, and he had trouble breathing. He had labored breathing, a lot of coughing and hacking type of breathing. Had to stop. He said they were on the carpet and he was reading a book, and he had to stop every 2 pages to to catch his breath to keep so. And he said that's when it started. That's when his misophonia started. Was he was exposed to that substitute teacher with the trouble breathing? Over.
Okay, that's a great, environmental story, anecdotal story where Craig, he was there on the carpet, and this teacher was, making these weird sounds and stopping and interrupting the class, and whatever it was, he developed that physical response that day to one or more of the sounds of that man. And then it expands and goes more and more and more and more. So does that answer?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That one last thing is that he feels that he said it was like an itch in his temples that he can't scratch. Is that part of the physical response probably, or over?
I don't know if it is, it may be a muscle. If you you may be having a muscle twinge in that area. If you put your hand up to your temples and you move your jaw around and you clench your jaw, you'll start to feel there are some muscles that go through that area. And so that may be a muscle response that may be part of his initial, this physical reflex here. It could also be that he's having these physical reflexes because of all the strong emotions and distress, and it could be a secondary response. Okay?
Yes.
And I wouldn't know without testing it. Now, your comment about CBT, I would say only go to a CBT therapist for misophonia if they can say, I have worked with a number of people and we've had good results. Because traditional CBT is not effective for misophonia unless the person really understands misophonia and is doing a special misophonia protocol. So,
understood.
okay.
What about that? What about that? ERDT or no, it's EMDT.
EMDR.
EMDR. Yes, sir.
So it typically it sometimes can be beneficial, but it is typically not a high beneficial treatment for misophonia. I'm not saying it can't be, but it's not typically. There are no simple established treatments out there today that are reliably beneficial for misophonia.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
You need somebody who knows about misophonia, who has treated misophonia. There's a therapist in Southern California who wrote the book, These Sounds Are Driving Me Crazy, and it's for mental health providers, and she goes at it from a mental health standpoint. So there are ways of helping a person with misophonia, but you need to find someone who has regular success with misophonia.
Tom,
okay,
can I ask, do you see patients? Do you work with?
Yeah. Oh yes, I do work with patients. I work with people every day except typically Thursdays and Sundays, which are my days off.
So we're in Maryland. How could our daughter work with you?
She sends me an email. I'll send back the forms to fill out. We meet by Zoom. This is a medical compliant Zoom link that we're on right now that people that are not here cannot spy on us, cannot listen in. And
availability?
And I always have availability.
yes.
I work from an office in my home. I put up fairly long hours, and I work and I play and I work and I play.
Thank you.
So, yeah. Okay.
How do we get your? Yeah, thank you for those responses. How do we email you or there it is on there? Okay.
Here it is right here. Tom@misophonia.org. I probably have a dozen email addresses at least. So this one works just fine. Tom@misophonia.org, and I will reply to you from thdozier@gmail.com, which is my kind of final destination for that. But yeah, send me an email, and I'm happy to help. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your answers. Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
what you do. Thank
Lyle,
you.
talk to us. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, real quick. You're saying that this seems like it's something that's not. But there must be something different. But why doesn't the person sitting next to me have, if they're exposed to the same stimuli, why do they not develop misophonia and I did? There must be something either genetic or something different about my processing system or something. It just I can't imagine that it's just we're normal people and this is some kind of normal situation.
So Lyle, it looks like one of the most there's two things. First off, you have to have noticed the sound and had some reaction to it. Okay? I met a friend of mine leaving church one day, and I said, Henry, I said, you're Hawaiian, right? He goes, oh, yeah. And I said, you're pretty laid back, aren't you, in Hawaii? He goes, oh, yeah, we're very laid back. I said, I just wonder, I've got this condition called misophonia where people are hearing sounds and being aware and noticing, kind of reacting to them. I said, I wonder if a laid back community would have a much lower percentage prevalence of misophonia, because what you have to do is be a person. And one study found that 97% of the people with misophonia in their study were perfectionists. So a perfectionist is very black and white thinking. It's either right or wrong. And so mom tells the three kids that, chew with your mouth closed. And one says, whatever. And the other says, oh, chew silently. They kind of embellish it a little bit, okay? And they want to make sure that everybody follows the rules. And then the third kid just never even heard mom, never even, And so this one who embellished the rules sees one of the kids or their dad, and they hear their dad chewing. Well, their rule was to chew silently, not with the mouth closed, and therefore, because they had that rule, they reacted when dad broke the rule. And it may be, dad broke the rule, hold my breath. Dad broke the rule. That's not fair. I get yelled at or criticized for the way I eat, but dad doesn't. That's not fair. And so there's a stimulus, there's a thought, and then there's an action. Stimulus, thought, action. Stimulus, thought, action. Lizard brain sees the stimulus and the action and says, I can do that for you, Lyle. And then it starts zapping you. Then it's stimulus, pow, stimulus, pow. And you go, don't stop chewing that way.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It just seems to me that there's got to be something more unique about somebody with misophonia, because doesn't kind of everybody go through that? I mean, that's kind of a circumstance at the dinner table where I had. That's exactly what I had. So, well, chew with your mouth closed. My brother sat right next to me. He doesn't have it. I do. It just seems to me that is there a gene that was passed on or something that,
Well,
both my brother and father have had transient hyperacusis, by the way.
But the point here, Lyle, there could be genes that make you more of a perfectionist. There are genes. There are genes that make you more perfectionist. There are genes that make you more anxious. There are genes that there are genetics factors here. But you may have been a more sensitive little boy than your brother. And so when your father yelled at y'all, you took it personally and went, oh, and had some reaction. And he goes, Dad's nuts. Right? And blows it off. And so that's the difference. If you look at the experience of children in a family, they all have different experiences from the same event. because one's sensitive, one's rebellious, one's so wrapped up in his video game that he doesn't pay attention. So it's really more unique experience. And you know, the story about this child in a classroom where the teacher was making all of these sounds, put them into a distressful situation. It had that day not happened, that child may have never developed misophonia.
Wow.
Right? I know a man who developed misophonia in his 20s to birds chirping, mockingbirds chirping, because he was in an apartment and a second floor bedroom, and a pair of mockingbirds built their nest outside of his bedroom window. That sounds cute with baby birds outside your window, except the male mockingbird chirps 24 hours a day at certain times of the year. And that damn bird kept chirping, and that damn bird, and he started developing goosebumps on his arms when that bird chirped. And then it got worse and worse and expanded, and it got worse. And had he not been in that spot with the birds chirping, he would definitely never developed misophonia to that sound. So
Yeah, it just seems to me that everybody gets into circumstances like that. I mean, just about everybody. I would think it would be a rare exception that a person that does not have a circumstance like that or similar to it.
well, it looks like it's about 80% of us don't and 20% of us do. That when we have those annoying repeating sounds, we kind of blow it off. If you look at the world of tinnitus, many people have the phantom ringing in their ears, but only a few become angry when they hear that ringing in their ears. So it's just the way reflexes develop.
Yeah, I have that too, as incidentally.
Yeah, but Lyle, do you become angry when you notice your tinnitus?
No.
Right. So you have non-clinical tinnitus because you're not having anger from it. We can't treat that phantom sound, but if a person is becoming distressed and angry from it, we can. Okay. Thank you, Lyle. Yes, Marge, go ahead.
Okay, so what about misokinesia? Like, even if you don't, you have a trigger sound, and then maybe you don't necessarily hear the trigger sound, but you see the person doing something,
Okay.
like
So
something
Marge,
related to that sound, and then
there's a
triggered
problem
by
with
just
your
seeing that.
there's a problem with your microphone, but I heard you asking what about misokinesia, and let me just respond to that, okay? Because it was garbled, it was a rough, it wasn't completely clear. Misokinesia is a name that was given early on to visual triggers. It is no longer in the consensus definition of misophonia. They say that misophonia is this extreme reaction to sounds or visual images. So we now call that visual triggers. So I'm going to talk about visual triggers. And misophonia can develop to any stimulus. I have secondhand knowledge of a case where this man has one trigger that's really disruptive to him in his life because of his environment, and it's the smell of orange peel. If you twist that orange peel, or if you kind of grate it off, you get that orange zest smell, and that's his only trigger. So it can be the sight that a lot of people develop triggers to stimuli, visual stimuli that's associated with an auditory trigger. So if you're triggered by eating sounds or mouth sounds, which again is very, very common, and you look at the person while they're eating, part of your brain is getting the visual image of their jaw movement and them eating, and part of your brain is reacting as an auditory trigger. And that pairs the sight of that sight of the person chewing with whatever physical response you're getting for the sound of their chewing, and it becomes an independent. Once it develops, it becomes an independent reflex where a person hears the sound and sees the image and has a misophonia response. The same as if they had heard the sound. Sometimes it's less severe. So you can have visual triggers, you can have tactile triggers, you can have odor triggers, you can have kind of vestibular or vibration triggers. It happens a lot in open office areas where the desks are hung from a common wall and somebody's bumping the wall and shaking your desk, and that shaking becomes a trigger. Did I answer your question enough? If not, you can unmute and try to ask again, but your auditory is not very stable. Okay? So, okay.
Thank you.
Another question. So, are we okay, Marge? Okay.
Yes.
Good. Thank you. All right. Do we have
Yes.
another question? We're an hour and 15 minutes into this. If somebody specifically has a question, I'd love you to go ahead and ask. We have time for one or two more. Okay, Dee, your hand is up. Speak up.
Hi there. First of all, I thank you for all you're doing. My family member is 38, and he has been having a lot of troubles over the course of a few years, but mainly the few years it's gotten worse. But
Okay.
previously, looking back, I think he's had a lot of them throughout his life, but they are manageable and whatnot. The biggest thing, I really feel for everyone that has somebody that has it, and I'm kind of excited to be getting in contact with you soon. I think we're definitely at the step where I'm hoping that it will really do him some good. I'm wondering if you have any kind of hopeful success stories you could share, just like one or two, just to give light in this
Sure.
situation.
So, I'm seeing if I've got this guy's words he just sent me. I'm holding his thing. This is a young man, age 16, in the middle United States. He had all kinds of triggers. And I'm looking at his severity rating. Initial severity, I would consider him moderate misophonia. We worked together for about, I'm looking for the date here. So we stopped last February. We started in September. So October, November, December, January, February. We worked for 5 months. And at the end of that time, he said, it's okay. I'm not, these sounds are not bothering me. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful. I've
great.
worked, that's a really good super case. A lot of people, it just comes down. I had a very slow case where this young lady was triggered by coughing. I finally got her to use the Trigger Tamer app while she was watching movies with her mother. She was a young adult still at home, and relaxing her tongue, because her tongue popped up into the top of her mouth whenever she heard a cough. And after she did that for a couple of months, the coughs were not as severe. She could carry on when there were coughs. And so I encourage her to keep doing that bringing down that trigger. So that's just a couple that popped to mind.
Yeah. It's just because the triggers just come out of nowhere sometimes, and you can't, like, I know, like, if he knows the sound is going to be coming, or if he makes the sound, it's different than all of a sudden if, oh, a car's going by with a loud thumping
Right.
sound, or, oh, the chipmunks are chirping in the backyard. So that was a good one because he has that one too. But I mean, I think his started a lot. Also has that non-24 sleep wake disorder, so he'd oftentimes have to sleep during the day. And then when you
Okay.
hear those things while you're trying to sleep, it was
Yeah, it's
very
more
hard to sleep during it, right? Yeah.
right, more distressing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I just thought of another case where the daughter would just be curled up in a corner crying after being exposed to triggers. Very, very nice, very sensitive young girl. And after working with her, she's just carrying on and dealing with it quite well. And the mom posted on the Facebook group for parents of children with misophonia 4S. And not my name or anything, she said, but my daughter, just celebrate with me. My daughter used to just go collapse into a ball of distress, and now she's dealing with these triggers as if they were not happening.
Right.
And her post was taken down. And she said, if anybody wants to know about it, personally, just message me. And the group took the post down. So, because a lot of people just assume there is no treatment for misophonia, and I provide treatment every day. So,
Okay, thank you.
Anybody who's
Good to
interested
hear.
in what I do, send me an email, tom@misophonia.org, and I'll send you a kind of a semi-automatic reply directed to whether it's for an adult or a child or a daughter or
Yeah.
whatever, and tell you about what I provide. But I do
I
this daily.
I already have your papers printed that he has to fill out. So we're gonna get to that point, but he also has an audiologist appointment the end of the month, and she states that she works with misophonia patients, but I'm kind of a little concerned if that would be like a good thing to do before seeing you, or do you think I should like make the appointment later? I don't know.
Well, audiologists can do some good things. They can help you understand misophonia as a reflex condition or as a not something you don't control.
Right.
They can provide a sound generator, which is a very small hearing aid case device like this.
Okay.
It's invisible, but essentially it's just putting a little bit of noise into your ears. You can try the same thing with AirPods.
Sure.
And a noise app, and see how that works for you, because I have talked in this session about the benefits of using
Right.
noise. But most people with misophonia have normal hearing and no neurological damage or problems. So
Well, that's what my son was like. Do you think I have a brain tumor?
No.
He knows the sounds aren't bad per se. He
Yeah.
knows it's normal. People can have their radio on, but
Right.
he just can't listen to it, and
Right.
he can't take it. And
Because
he's at the point where he's like has a downstairs basement now. And with Randy's point of like when I would hear the sounds of the items coming by like the cars passing and stuff,
yeah.
I would get just as nervous or whatever. I have it too, whatever you were saying. I have misophonia now too. But it makes me feel better on some of the sounds that I know he's safe and he's
Yeah.
not going to be triggered and like be so upset that I can function better.
Right. But sounds of cars passing can be particularly good to work with because you have about a 5 to 10 second window while the car passes, right? And so if it's a breath reflex, you start breathing when you hear the cars, or you relax your body and just try to melt until the car passes, because the car it's jabbing you, it's hitting him. And
I
so
wrote that down for the breathing to start that right away.
But breathing only makes a difference if the initial physical reflex is a breath reflex.
Right.
If it
I got
is
to
in the
ask you.
shoulders, then breathing doesn't make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
So then
So,
relaxing your shoulders.
well, wherever it is, that's
Yeah.
part of the reason
Right.
that when I meet
Okay.
with somebody, we try to locate, and it can be different for every trigger. The
Sure.
reflex can be.
Yes. Oh, that makes it more
It
complicated.
does. It makes it a
Right.
challenge too in that
Right.
case. So,
Yes, for sure. Okay.
okay, thank you, Dee.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Randy.
Tom, one of the most interesting things that my wife Lynn and I have gotten out of this hour with you is perhaps why our shoulders, both of us, we've had cortisone shots and all kinds of stuff over the last few years, and the fact that misophonia is contagious.
Yeah.
That may really imply a lot for what we've been going through. But what I guess I wanted to ask is, we dropped off the face of the earth with you after 8 years ago. You had recommended hypnotherapy, and that was nice, but not enough for Natalie. Really, just by not trying not to think about it is the way she has been managing her symptoms. Getting her back into working with somebody is going to be a challenge. How do
Sure.
you recommend we approach that at this point after she's had so many negative experiences with CBT, failed experiences,
Yeah. Yeah.
and is really preferring just not to think about it?
Where is she located?
She's in Maryland here with us. She's actually living in the house with us.
Okay, the reason I asked that question is because if she was in Central Texas or North Texas, that would have been a different thing. I would say that you could introduce it as that we've made advances, that you heard this, attended this webinar or this Zoom meeting, and you found out that there are treatments that have been developed for misophonia, and in fact, they're actually officially testing these treatments now at the University of North Texas in a formal study. If you would like to hear about this treatment, we could meet with Tom Dozier again, and you could learn about what this treatment is about and see if you have any interest in it.
How often would she have to fly to North Texas? Because that's not beyond the thought process.
Well, it's a 16 session treatment, so it'd be every week for probably 12 weeks, and then it might be every other week for another.
Oh, and it's all in
weeks.
person?
It's all in person.
Ah, got it.
Right. So, anyway, Randy, that's what I would suggest is that, we've made advances in the 8 years since you talked, because 8 years ago, I was referring people for hypnotherapy. I was bringing them in, having the initial assessment, talking about misophonia, managing misophonia, and then passing them over to hypnotherapists because I felt the skills to effectively treat a difficult, significant case. But since then, since 2019, when I talked about that, being at that conference with Nate Mitchell, and looked at the difference of what he was doing from what I had taught him and what he was doing, then I went back to providing a stronger treatment for misophonia.
Yeah, no, I'm very encouraged just hearing the library of knowledge that you've developed since then, the tools that you have now, and there's seems to be a lot more hope.
Right. Thank you. So everyone, we're at our limit. I've had a blast talking with you today, and I'm going to be here next Saturday doing the same thing as long as I'm having enough people that we have a good discussion. And so I wish you all well. I will close off by sharing my contact information again. I do regularly work with people with misophonia, and I am looking for opportunities for research partners who will conduct research so that the Misophonia Institute can fund that. So thank you very much, and I wish you all to have a great Saturday and a weekend, and I will maybe see some of you next week. So thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you.